New York City, the city of 8 million stories. And one story is uniquely ours. The story of a community replanted. A community together. Breuers together. Henry Rosenberg has held a position on the synagogue committee in our shul for many years. He can be counted on with the juggling of the kibudim and the running of the services. But he grew up in a smaller shul in a different part of the neighborhood. Ahavath Torah is where he had his childhood and his bar mitzvah. It was the first stop for his family when they came to these shores, from the place they once called home, Frankfurt am Main.
Okay, we came in 1940, barely got out because they really not sure if they wanted us. So we just barely got out February 1st, 1940, and came here. We lived on 159th Street. That's why we joined Levy shul. See the little Kaddish cup? The little one.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I brought over from. I kept it in my pocket. You were not supposed to have any silver. It's got my name on it, Heinz.
Wow.
That was my Heinz, my name.
A lot of people who were Heinz became Henry when they came to America. No?
I went to school, public school. The teacher says, that's not a nice name, Heinz.
During the war too, yeah.
But all my relatives called me Heinz.
What?
They didn't get used to calling Henry.
Actually, the Kiddush cup was not the only item to come to America with Henry's family. In the mid-1930s, Henry Rosenberg's family moved from Frankfurt to the small village of Mumberg for 3 years to be near his grandmother. Mumberg had only 30 Jews, or 10 families, and his uncle was known as the proprietor of a matzah bakery and a noodle factory that employed many villagers. Then came Kristallnacht.
When the Kristallnacht, when that happened November 9th, all the Sefer Torahs were lying on the floor. Smashed the shul. In the morning, my cousin and myself went to the shul, and we picked up this one Sefer Torah. It wasn't too badly damaged, and one Eitz Chaim was broken.
The Mumberg synagogue was not torched on Kristallnacht because the villagers protested the damage it would cause adjacent properties. Instead, the holy books and scrolls were burnt in front of the shul. Today the edifice is a simple barn, but signs of the synagogue are evident from the inside.
So we took it home, and my uncle brought it to America, and we had it checked and fixed up, made kosher, and I lined out of it in 1941. And many, many years later, my grandson, a few years ago, lined out of it.
For many years, the Mumberg Torah scroll was housed in Ahavath Torah, the shul and community where Henry, his parents and siblings, and the Blumenfeld cousins of Mumberg started life anew on these American shores, in the style of those that came before them. It is their legacy.
I was bar mitzvah in the shul, and I had my ufu for my wedding in the shul. And ultimately I became the Rav of the shul. And that's unusual for someone who's brought up in the shul and ultimately will become the Rav of the shul.
The small rural Jewish communities of Germany often could not employ a rabbi. For generations they were led by lehrers, or teachers, people educated enough to educate the youth, lead the services, and conduct life cycle events. This was all the small communities needed, and all they could afford. A Landsrabbiner, a district rabbi, would oversee the more difficult affairs of an entire region. This model repeated itself in America, as many local rabbis were only religious teachers, sometimes only using the title Reverend. Eric Zimmer, born in Frankfurt, was raised in the lap of the Ahavath Torah congregation and its small-town style. In 1959, a young Eric Zimmer was filling in as rabbi in the Ahavath Torah shul he grew up in. As the permanent position of rabbi opened up, he was the natural choice. Having just received rabbinical ordination and a student of the Lithuanian Torah genius Joseph Ber Soloveitchik, Eric would be an exception to the custom of Lehrer as community leader. He belonged to the up-and-coming generation of American-trained rabbis, primed and conditioned for the challenges of modern American life, though he would be leading an ancient community.
He came more from Western Germany than northwestern and southwestern Germany, such as Hessen and Baden. Many of them came from small villages, but some came from larger cities, such as the first president of the shul came from Mannheim. And when I became the Rav of the shul, all the sermons were in German. My mother tongue was German, although I was brought up and educated in America.
Rabbi Zimmer led the congregation through its merger with Tikva Chatasha in 1965. At that time, he published a booklet describing the events and the speeches of that day. And he led it through the early 1970s, when he made Aliyah to join the faculty at Bar Ilan, where he is published in Jewish studies, including works documenting and unveiling the history of the Jews of the German communities of the countryside, a population he knows and loves. The late 60s, and through its merge into the Shari HaTikva congregation, was punctuated by the addition of two chazanim to the Ahavath Torah family. Rabbis Ronnie Levy and Leslie Weiss began davening and laning in the shul. Rabbi Levy was still single and Rabbi Weiss was newly married, but both were capable and talented, and both were from within our community.
And I think the first Shabbos I was Shabbos Shoftim.
What year?
1968. I don't know.
I adapted, having been born and raised in America, and having also the poetic freedom, the musical freedom, to not be restricted strictly to German nusach. I was able to introduce, at that time, Kalabach was, of course, becoming very popular, or was popular, as well as many other singing groups or individuals, and I was able to introduce those tunes where the flexibility existed, such as in Kelodon or in Kedusha.
A young Ronnie Levy was raised in the bosom of Ahavath Torah and Rabbi Lieber's tutelage. His wife and her parents were Schottland members, and the young Leslie Weiss had just married Peggy Stern of Ahavath Torah. Her father, the choir director there, his father, the choir director in Breuer's. As they were leading the congregation and reading the Torah, these two men were building successes in Jewish education. Rabbi Weiss as a popular fourth-grade Rebbe and high school math teacher in the Breuer School, and Rabbi Levy as a seasoned history teacher and later principal at JEC and Yeshiva of Flatbush. Their relationship as friends and co-cantors spans over 50 years. They are the exemplars and the representatives of the family of communities south of the bridge. In 1975, Ahavath Torah and Tikva Chadasha began their merger with the larger congregation Sharei HaTikva, moving into the latter's building at 711 West 179th Street. The merger was legally concluded in 1977. It united 3 shuls that once existed in a community that no longer does.
Hashem, Kol haaretz lammenatzeach shir mizmor, hariu Hashem, Kol haaretz. Kum Hashem, ve'yavutu elam, ve'yanussu misanav mikvanav. Lammenatzeach shir mizmor, hariu Hashem. Hashem, Kol haaretz lammenatzeach shir mizmor, hariu Hashem, Kol haaretz.
And there are many, many success stories where Rabbi has reached out to students who are in public school who are now Shomer Torah and Shomer Mitzvahs, and whose children certainly then became Bnei Yeshiva and Bnei Torah.
Rabbi Levy was actually instrumental in sending a lot of them to camp and make sure that they went to Camp Ahavath. We were just talking about it recently.
Yeah.
And that somehow insulated them to remain frum Jews.
Shir mizmor, hariu Hashem.